in stained glass windows, in mosaics on the walls and the domes of churches, often we find Jesus seated on a wonderful throne, wearing beautiful garbs, a crown of gold on his head, a scepter in his hand, looking very, very king-like in secular terms. Whereas the feast of Christ the King does not paint that picture at all. The picture of Jesus in the gospel today is saying, you want to know me? You want to find me? Then look for me in every needy person you see. Or in the first reading, a picture of a shepherd, not some elegant figure, but God coming as shepherd because so many of the other shepherds have failed his people. I'll shepherd them myself. A shepherd. Next year, when we celebrate the feast of Christ the King, we'll be reading from the Gospel of John. And there stands Jesus before Pilate, a condemned criminal, saying as clearly as possible, my kingdom is not of this world. It's not worldly like you, Pilate, Herod, might imagine. And on the sea cycle, the image of Christ the King is hanging on a cross, promising paradise to the one beside him who repents. There's nothing beautiful about kingship as Jesus claims to be a king. Very different from much of the art world of our church. When Pius XI instituted this feast of our Lord Jesus Christ, King of the universe, one of the longest titles of a feast day there is, our Lord Jesus Christ, King of the universe. When he instituted this in 1925, it was a call to the world to return to Christ. He was looking at a world recovering from the First World War and seeing the rise of nationalism, authoritarianism that would morph into Nazism, communism, happening in Europe and other places of the world. And in the face of this, Pius XI calling the church to once again center ourselves on Christ and not these other movements that were drawing us away from God. When Francis of Assisi enters the picture, one of the things that Francis says to describe himself is, I am the herald of a great king. I am the herald of a great king. Francis, pondering the Gospels, knew that he would meet Jesus the Christ not in any palace, but in the eyes of a leper. He also recognized the humility of God in the incarnation, that Jesus would be born in abject poverty. Francis fell in love with that image of Jesus. And he would try his best throughout his life to embrace the crucified Christ. Embrace the sufferings that were depicted in that cross. Francis knew that the kingship of Jesus was not on thrones and palaces, but the king he wanted to serve was very much in the eyes and the needs, the disguise of the poor and the needy. Yes, Christ is present here. Christ is present here in a profound, real, mysterious way in the consecration of bread and wine. Christ dwells here. Yes, Christ is present in the Blessed Sacrament when placed upon an altar for us to adore in a lovely golden monstrance. But if you really listen to Jesus, if you really want to know where he is, you've got to look at where he said he would be. When we quench the thirst or feed the hungry, help clothe the naked, give coats to people in the winter, when we extend a welcome to people that are strangers to us, when we do reach out to those who are sick, you are much more likely to meet Jesus than in some of the more ornate and prettified ways. One of the things that I found sort of distressing toward the end of my years at the campus at UC was a movement toward more sacred than getting your hands dirty with people. More emphasis on adoration, going to Mass and confession frequently, all in a nice, pretty space. And toward the end, hardly any students wanted to go on service trips and mission trips during spring break. It's like, are they really ever going to know Christ unless they begin to get to know Christ in the eyes of the poor, in the needs of the poor? Yes, present in Eucharist, present in the Blessed Sacrament. But first and foremost, we meet him in the people who are needy. He's disguised, my God, well disguised. It isn't easy sometimes to see a presence of Christ in some of the folks we meet. It may not even be easy for you to meet Christ in certain members of your family. It's not always easy to see in other human beings a reflection of the divine. But if we believe Jesus, and ultimately, who else do we have to depend on? But if we believe Jesus, he's already told us the questions and the answers on the final exam. I mean, what teacher does that? He's made it so clear. These are the questions on the final exam, and these are the best answers. Duh. It just remains for us to do it. It remains for us to do it. It's not just writing the answer on an exam. It's living what Jesus invites us to do. So on this feast of Christ the King, we glory not in a secular view of all of this, not in kingly, queenly garb, but in the simple, profound garb of many who are needy, who don't have sufficient food and drink. It's a beautiful thing that St. Francis Seraph Ministries, outgrowth of our parish, is trying as much as possible to see in our sisters and brothers the image of Christ reflected back to us, and trying to be of service to them. As we enter into these weeks before Christmas, may it also be a time of an outpouring of generosity, love toward others who depend upon us. And we then receive relationship with Christ we enter into relationship with the most needy among us.